Today's 7th Circle Gaming, we're going to analyze the game Ymir, and we're going to begin in the usual manner with a little bit of full disclosure. And as always, you are perfectly welcome to pause the video now and read through all of these at your leisure, or if you prefer not to, don't pause the video and we'll jump right in with the first screenshot. Now, the first screenshot we have to share with you is illustrative of what the in-game province view looks like. On this menu, or in this screenshot, what we want to share with you most importantly are on the top left, or on the top center, and the top right of the screen. At the top right can be found the mini-map, which at this point is somewhat useless, but below that can be found the build menu and the recruiting units menu. At the top center of the screen can be found the notifications bar and another bar for moving from the province view to the overworld view. And with that, let's now talk about the overworld view. In the overworld view, which is what we're looking at now, you can see that Ymir has divided the world up into rectangular provinces. Now, this menu, or this screenshot, presents a couple of changes to the in-game menu. Now we have a new menu on the top left-hand corner of the screen, and the top right menu has changed. The top left-hand corner of the screen now shows a couple of new icons, which must represent in-game currencies, but the tutorial does not make that incredibly clear what those are. It also includes a crown menu, which provides the player with a couple of broad overview menus for controlling their civilization. On top right, now we have a sort of province interaction menu from which various actions from within the province can be completed without moving down to the province menu, like recruiting new units. And it should be noted that the military units are recruited from the existing NPCs at that particular province. So there's not an infinite supply of soldier units, in other words. So a unit that has 10 units within it can only recruit a maximum of 10 military units. And with that, let's move right along to the third major part of the game, which with any sort of 4X civilization game is going to be the research tree. Now this is just representative of one of the many technology trees that the game is going to have. We chose to illustrate this one because the civilization points that are required to purchase the upgrades are sort of earned through real world time, approximately 5 minutes and 30 seconds, or half 6 minutes. And seems to be that 2 of those civilization points are approximately 12 minutes, are required to unlock any new technologies or new cultural levels. Now, the game does have an additional way of unlocking technologies, but those are purely through serendipity, or random number generation, in other words. And with that, we're going to move on to our first chapter proper, which is Immersion, as always. Now here, Ymir has earned a 2.5 out of 15. The in-game world is presented through a top-down perspective with non-human creatures. That doesn't seem to be Well, gravity isn't a particular concern in this game, so we haven't included it. Players that are more familiar with playing a game centered around non-human creatures will find that a little bit more relatable than players that have not. Then, the game will be attempting to utilize challenge to get players invested into the game world in the sense that players will make decisions about the development of their culture. The game itself is going to say that Ymir is not meant to be an easy game, it is meant to be difficult. So even though the game might be set to normal or easy, do expect a significant challenge. Thirdly, the game will be attempting to utilize player agency to get players invested into the game world in the sense that players will be creating a governor or king character based on their own preferences, and they will be defining various titles from within their culture, and they will be building their armies according to their own preferences. And with that, now we need to move right along to difficulty. Here, the game has earned a 1 out of 15. From all of our evaluation sessions, we have found that the key commands were rather unusual, and the hitbox detection can be somewhat off, which is another way of saying that we found that depending on which on our session, that some things would need to be single clicked and in others an item would need to be double clicked. The tutorial is not only highly advised, but a significant number of features will be gated behind completion of the tutorial. The game will be utilizing an autosave feature, and so mistakes cannot easily be corrected without restarting the entire culture. One other thing or a couple of other notes that we would make is that the user interface is very minimalistic, but the tutorial could be more complete in describing what all of the different icons mean. Beyond that, we would also add that while the game does include in-game combat, the combat is particularly hands-off. A unit simply moves into an area, and success or failure is more determined by the unit composition than any sort of tactics. And moving right along now to the lasting appeal. Here the game has earned a 2 out of 15. It lacks any mod support at present or DLC, and it seems to require long sessions to experience any sort of progress, which we alluded to earlier when we mentioned that acquiring the civilization points requires approximately 6 minutes of real-world time. We did not necessarily add, but we will add now, that the baseline for acquiring cultural development points is 2, requiring roughly 12 to 13 minutes of real-world time to acquire a new cultural aspect or a new culture point or a useful culture point. And we would add too at this point that the game does not allow the player to have a significant amount of choice in acquiring or which new technology or which new cultural aspect that they will acquire. It's very much a straight line of cultural development rather than a tree as we might expect in other similar games. Now, as we have said before, this is an early access game, so do expect things to change. And speaking of change, we're now going to change to the overall score. Here the game has earned a 1.83 out of 15. The single-player content we have found to be rather limited gated behind completion of the tutorial. The most awkward thing that we did find is the control scheme. Now, this is possible that it could be changed through the settings menu, but utilizing the default control scheme, we did find it to be substantially awkward. The game seems to require a long-term or expect a long-term commitment in order to experience any significant progress. As we said earlier, the sort of baseline for experiencing any progress at all would be about 13 minutes, or as much as 45 or up to an hour and a half to experience the significant level of cultural enhancement or acquiring enough cultural points to experience any sort of cultural advancement. And on that, we will try to keep this below the amount of time that the player would need to get 2 culture points. And we will just say thank you very much for watching all the way to the end if you did. And if you did find this useful, interesting, whatever else, hey, do the other YouTube things, and we'll see you on the next analysis, which will either be Shadow Empire or Partisans 1941. And from 7th Circle Gaming, goodbye.